All right, for more on this, we are being joined live by Bishop Garrison from Virginia. He's a former senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense and a senior fellow at the National Security Institute and George Mason University Law School. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA.
Thank you for having me.
Now, to begin with, Mr. Garrison, of course, we know that there is going to be a deal when it comes to infrastructure and energy targets, and Russia has stopped short of a full ceasefire. That being said, what's your assessment of this partial ceasefire, if I could call it that, and what sort of negotiations can we expect when it comes to what they've said, technical negotiations on maritime as well?
Well, as the White House has stated, they see this as a beginning, a first step towards something that can hopefully lead to a lasting, long-standing peace. So a lot remains to be seen, just as you mentioned with President of Ukraine and his remarks regarding this particular plan. He needs to know more details, just like all of the other Western leaders that this is going to potentially affect, and to include EU and NATO member states. They want to know more about what this actually means. Right now, they're saying it is just a very limited ceasefire that relates back to energy infrastructure, as you mentioned. And only moments after the call ended, there were air raid sirens in Kyiv, indicating that they were worried about, again, another Russian attack. So a lot remains to be seen here. President Putin has not made any indications about any type of longevity with this plan, or if he's actually officially accepted it.
Mr. Garrison, as far as a statement coming out from Russia on this, one of the things that came out was that Russia has made it clear that there is an unconditional need to eliminate the root causes of the crisis. Do you feel that rules out NATO membership for Ukraine, and how does that perhaps have an impact on the EU peacekeepers being deployed to the borderlines as was being planned, at least in the European side?
I think that's a great question. I think it affects both things. Russia has also indicated that it has no intention, and it is not going to remove troops from any of the 4 annexed regions or regions that it already has troops in that are a part of Ukraine. It does not want to see Ukraine as a part of NATO membership, because then you potentially have NATO members invoking Article 5 if they need to come in and help protect Ukraine. And European allies have already indicated that they are going to do everything they can to support Ukraine. And Russia does not want to see European peacekeepers in the region. So, again, a lot remains to be seen as to what this type of ceasefire actually means and what it could potentially lead to. To be clear, a ceasefire, a true ceasefire, is an important thing and can potentially save lives. And I really support the White House in trying to achieve that. But a lot remains to be seen in this type of deal.
Right, Mr. Garrison, that being said, of course, we've seen that Trump has labeled these talks good and productive. He'd also earlier said that they'll be discussing land and division of assets, just to expand on what Shivan just asked you. My question to you is, do you reckon that perhaps Trump overestimated how quickly he would be able to resolve this issue, and whether he had an understanding with Putin or not, and how that plays out going forward?
Well, I think the White House went into this hoping that they would be able to resolve it quickly through a variety of levers in their diplomatic disposal, so to speak. Whenever you speak of additional sanctions and pressures, kind of a carrot versus a stick approach whenever it comes to Russia. But again, Vladimir Putin has been pushing for this invasion for some time. And now you have a part of the war economy in which the Russian domestic economy is reliant in some parts on this war. And we've seen more than a few articles come out about this recently, in which there are great concerns about their continuous shrink in GDP, and whether or not they could potentially run into a long-standing recession if they were to cease this activity and actually end the overall war if a peace were to break out. So there are a lot of incentives right now for Russia and for Vladimir Putin to continue this. And the question is going to be, well, how do the United States and Europe, NATO, bring Putin truly to the table and get him to understand it's not his best interest to continue this.
That's definitely an important point that's come up from this discussion, and what Haim just asked you, that Trump had mentioned land and negotiations over assets, and that the talks haven't reached that far yet. So perhaps, there is more optimism than result at this point, but at least any step forward towards a ceasefire is a good decision at this point. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Bishop Garrison joining us from Virginia.
Thank you for having me.